Good afternoon, friends. We have today with us Professor Udhab Phiakurel. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing correctly.
Very
and
correct.
Dr.
Not professor, but others names are correct.
Okay. And Dr. Indra Adhikari. This is a seminar on Nepal, a seminar on a country on which we don't really get the opportunity of hearing many things because we don't often get visitors and experts from Nepal coming and speaking to us. Uh, we know about the earthquake that has taken place in Nepal, and we have been trying to gather some insights and responses on the post earthquake reconstruction activities in Nepal, which have, other than the scale of their involvement in terms of international participation and the funding, have also created some controversies over the strategic implications that these have. But that should not obviously hide the fact that this was an earthquake of tremendous significance in terms of the loss that it meant for human lives and material injury. And some of these numbers are actually quite stunning. Caused more than 8,000 deaths, over 16,000 people were injured. Schools, civil construction, buildings, transport, and practically all aspects of the civil society and common life were destroyed. And for a country like Nepal, it's a huge challenge to come back to normalcy, and there are also domestic political issues involved in the road to reconstruction that Nepal is taking. So we would very much look forward to hearing our visitors speaking on this. And just in terms of introduction, Udhab Phiakurel is a PhD from JNU. He's teaching political sociology as assistant professor in the School of Arts, Kathmandu University in Nepal. He's associated with various civil society democracy forums, including the South Asian Dialogues on Ecological Democracy, the Network Institute for Global Democratization. He is also an author of a book on the Maoist movement in Nepal, a sociological perspective, and co-author of books on Dalit representation in national politics of Nepal and the state of conflict and democratic movement in Nepal. And he's also editor of a monograph titled Higher Education in Nepal, Inclusive Guidelines. On a different aspect, he has been engaged in the earthquake-affected villages for rescue, rehabilitation, and rebuilding process. So in a sense, he has been involved on ground in the rehabilitation that has been going on. Our other visitor, Indra Adhikari, is also a PhD from JNU, and she's the executive chairperson of South Asian Dialogues and has been a visiting faculty at the Central Department of Political Science since 2011. She was the SARC visiting fellow at IDSA New Delhi, the Harka Gurung Research Fellow, and the project coordinator at Nepal's Center for Contemporary Studies, and she has been the co-author of the book on State of Conflict and Democratic Movement in Nepal and Military and Democracy in Nepal, a study of democratization of Nepal Army. So eminently qualified people to speak on the Nepal earthquake and the state response and make some observations on that. So the floor is yours. I think you plan to start with a short video, is it? Yeah, and then you can go ahead to your respective or joint presentations. We have around 45 minutes with us, and then we can go on to the question answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Director Sir, Professor Subhatra Mitra, for having us over here. And I should thank Rajiv ji, otherwise it would not be possible because, as we discussed earlier, there should be someone known to us. That is how this kind of event will be materialized. So I think without further delay, I think our structure would be Indra ji after this video will present a bit, then I'll continue it. So let us watch this video a bit and then continue. Thank you. this is in the core of this Kathmandu's market. It is footage of CCTV camera, so there is no sound at all.
What area is this?
This is core area of Kathmandu. No, not a very old city like Asan. Asan.
Thank you, chairpersons, and thank you, Sir Professor Subhadra Mitra, sir. Then thanks all the participants here who are ready to hear us. And I'm really thankful to Rajiv ji. He is my classmate in MPhil and even PhD, and he is my good friend. Because of him, I'm here. Sole source of connection with this institution is Rajiv ji, so I'm really thankful to him. And I just want to go through the facts so that we can really know what was going on at that time. Then what government is responding, what international community is responding on the earthquake. So we have prepared the PowerPoints. I will go through it. Then we'll discuss in detail later. Yeah, on Sunday, Saturday, 25th April 2015 at 11:56 local time. This is local time. A 7.6 magnitude earthquake was recorded in Nepal. It started from Gorkha, about 76 kilometers from Kathmandu. The catastrophic earthquake was followed by more than 500 aftershocks greater than 4.0 magnitude, and 4 aftershocks were greater than 6.0 magnitude, including one measuring 6.8 magnitude, which struck 17 days after the first big one. 31 out of country's 75 districts have been affected. Out of them, 40 districts were declared a crisis hit, and another 17 neighboring districts are partially affected. This is the place, especially this is Nepal. The small map is of Nepal. Then the round of red can cover all the earthquake affected districts. These are the major districts affected by earthquake. This is northern part of Nepal. Even it is in center, but northern part of nearby China border is affected mostly. Then we can go through the loss and damages. Over 8,719 casualties was recorded, and 22,300 injured were recorded. The lives of 8 million people, almost 1/3 of the population of Nepal, have been affected by this earthquake. And reports state that some 7,61,273 personal buildings were collapsed. Then 10,803 government buildings have fully been destroyed. Out of them, 15,034 are partially destroyed. 41% schools out of 18,209 were completely destroyed in 49 districts, but 4,650 schools were affected in 14 major hit districts. Similarly, 2,106 toilets and 1,363 drinking waters in schools were also destroyed. An estimated 200 Buddhist nuns and monks died after the earthquake. 1,000 monasteries collapsed in the hardest hit 14 districts. Out of the total 4,468 public and private health care, earthquake destroyed 446 public health facilities and then 16 private establishments. In addition, 701 public health facilities, including 64 private health establishments, are partially damaged. According to the UNFPA, about 1 million children and more than 1.4 million families of reproductive age live in 14 districts are adversely affected. Approximately 138,000 of female might be the number of pregnant till the next 12 months. Out of this figure, 18,600 will need obstetric care. The total value of disaster effect caused by earthquake is 706 billion Nepali rupees. It is equivalent to $7 billion US dollar. The tourism has been adversely affected with every 10 planned foreign arrivals cancelled. The main earthquake and prolonged aftershocks caused damage to 7 out of 10 World Heritage sites in the Kathmandu Valley and affected popular trekking routes. Road damage is worth 1.38 billion across the country. It is according to the Department of Road. And the government's revenue growth has slowed down in the short term as a result of disrupted business activities. As a whole, according to the World Bank's estimation, the earthquake will end up pushing an additional 2.5 to 3.5% Nepalese population into poverty in fiscal year 2015 to 16, which translates into at least 700,000 additional poor. If we talk about the rescue and rehabilitations, 134 international search and rescue operations teams from 34 countries responded to Nepal's request to help. The Ministry of Home Affairs reported that for search and rescue, 4,236 helicopters flights were used by the government sites and private, with 7,548 persons rescued by air and 4,689 persons rescued by land. More than 90% of security forces were mobilized to focus on search and rescue operations, and 22,500 civil servants as well as 4,000 health workers also were mobilized to aid rescue and relief efforts. Emergency relief and humanitarian assistance to affected populations was provided with the active support of and contribution by over 60 countries as well as the United Nations and other international agencies. And similarly, Singapore also sent a search and rescue team of 55 people to Nepal, and it has committed that it would donate $100,000 to Singapore Red Cross. It will help through the Red Cross. And then, if we talk about the government's policies and plan to respond the earthquake affected people in the area, according to our government announced the 40,000 per family for performing the death rituals of their kin who lost their life were provided. And similarly, monastery support of Nepali currency 100,000 per family that lost its family members. And then free treatment to injured people in all public and private hospitals, residence and free education for children who have lost their relatives and who have become homeless has been committed. The immediate relief of 25,000 for family for those who wish to repair their houses partially damaged by the earthquake was also provided. Then the government committed to provide seeds for summer crops free of cost and fertilizer at concessional rate to the farmer. And then the government also expressed its commitment to for full waiver on land tax for a year. Then waivers also was provided on loan up to the 50,000 to earthquake victims, depending upon the losses suffered by the victim, and 200,000 to those families whose houses were destroyed and who wish to reconstruct their house themselves online with the standards set by the government. It was also committed by the government, and loan also would be provided Nepali rupees 2.5 million per person, and then in Kathmandu, then 1.5 million outside of the Kathmandu at the concessional interest rate of 2% per annum. And similarly, the historical, religious, and archaeological and cultural heritage also will be restored to their original state with 5 years. Then according to our government's plan, the government proposed the budget also, and in the budget proposal, our finance minister allocated some budgets. According to the budget recorded, Reconstruction Authority will be fully operational soon with the highest level of leadership. Special authority guaranteed of financial resources, specific term of work also will be with it. Then there will be provision of citizens feedback mechanism and efficient professional structure. And the cost for the first phase of construction will be 667 billion rupee. And then such expenditure will be managed from the National Reconstruction Fund. It will be formed by the government for moving forward to reconstruction work expeditiously. Until this fund, under this fund, a project will be carried out by the internal and external resources, and cash along with the collected amount by issuance of the reconstruction bond to enhance ownership and participation of general public in the reconstruction work. Then it will allocate 74 billion in this fund for the next fiscal year. Out of these, 50 billion for housing and 3 billion for public building, 2 billion for architectural structure, 7 billion for other physical infrastructure, and 6 billion for production sector. Similarly, 6 billion for the social sector will be spent according to the data. Then it will allocate 17 billion for purpose in addition to the expenditure made from National Reconstruction Fund, and loan with a 2% consensual interest rate from the bank and financial institutions would be provided under the simple procedure formulated by the Nepal Rashtra Bank. This is our central bank. And provision to bear 30% of the local contribution by the government in water supply and sanitation projects. Then for the reconstruction of damaged structure, government will provide the skill development training on various subjects like mason, farming, and electrician. And then they will provide to the 50,000 youth then they will provide the training to the 50,000 youths in the district level through skill development center. Such skill and knowledge will be accelerated. The skill development centers will also evaluate the training conducted by non-governmental organizations. The rest Uddhav will see.
Thank you, Indraji. The data has been presented by you. So it seems there are too much words in that PowerPoint, so I think it was inconvenient to read for you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's quite cozy.
What happened? It's not going on. Yeah. Give me. So once she has elaborated what happened and what are the government efforts, then I think we should move. Okay. So financial requirement and arrangement, I just want to repeat. The estimated external assistance to meet the rehabilitation and reconstruction cost would be 6.7 billion US dollar. So government has set up a national reconstruction fund of NPR 200 billion, that is equivalent to 1.95 billion US dollar, to which it has already committed some 20 billion Nepali rupees by the government. And a meeting of foreign donors also was held in Kathmandu in June 25, and the donors pledged approximately 3 billion US dollar to rebuild Nepal. Out of this, India committed some 1 billion, China 483 billion US dollar, ADB 600 million, World Bank 500 million, Japan 260 million, USA 130 million, and EU some 100 million. These are the major amounts donors committed. So if we follow state of reconstruction process, in fact, we could see National Reconstruction Authority. It was formed just after 2 months, this government also appointed new CEO for that project. But unfortunately, due to the political clash, the authority was formed along with the ordinance, and in fact there was politics. That is why that ordinance expired without being replaced by the act. So in fact, if you ask me today, there is no legal authority to accomplish the agendas government has set up. That is how people are so worried about what happened, and in between there was this issue of constitution making process. I don't know how it could come along with this very difficult situation. It is also one of the questions, and that is why there is no authority at all, in fact, and there were many stories narrated about this authority and etc. So now onwards, we try to have some of our observations. For example, one of the observations is chairperson introduced us as one of the involving persons in the very process of rescue and rehabilitation, because I also happen to be the injured guy, because by this second aftershocks, which was narrated by Indra as 6.8, I also, my right hand was broken. At that time, I was in the village with the rescue and rehabilitation team. That is how we were involved. And what we could see, for example, she has narrated that almost 90% security were involved. Quite a big number of bureaucracy was there to do rescue and rehabilitation. But I don't know, maybe due to our modus operandi or something like this, it was very difficult for people to realize that government is coming them there to help them. For example, by and large, people would say that no government is there to support them. And interestingly, in couple of cases, yes, no government institution were there. For example, I visited 7 kilometers away of the headquarters where 7, 8 people were died due to earthquake, and asked them when police arrived so that they could go for funeral ceremony, because police had to certify for that funeral as well because of this lot many provisions. So it took 22 hours for police to reach there just to verify these kind of activities up to 7 kilometers from headquarters. It is one case, but even if there is a security force helping them in rescue and this rehabilitation, for people, they try to separate the security force as if they are these are not government force. They wanted, I don't know, maybe politician or pure bureaucrat or something like this. That is why even if security is very much over there, they just narrate, oh no, there is no government. Government presence is kind of lacking behind. That is what people quite often narrated during this earthquake. This is number one observation we could see. And in between, there was a kind of debate whether government should go for one-door policy to implement all, to operate this rescue rehabilitation, or it would simultaneously allow other forces as well. For example, NGOs, civil society activities, and etc. Initially, government said that there should be one-door policy, but it was being criticized heavily by NGOs, INGOs, and other society, saying that you can't bear with this because immediately people need relief, rescue, etc., and you don't have that kind of mechanism. But I don't know, it is sort of a contested issue. But if you ask me personally, it would have been good for the Nepal government if it could continue with that very provision without avoiding presence of other civil society activities, but being the coordinator or facilitator of all these initiatives. It is because of the fact that you see, even if we talk this NGO, INGO performance, but I could sense during this process of rescue and rehabilitation, it also couldn't do better because it also had its own limitation, even if they feel like they are doing better, but eventually the implementing agency would be people like me who are there in the ground. And the way I work for government, I also continue with that similar modus operandi with NGO as well. So I am also lazy. That is why I'm not better than that of a government servant. That how I could say, for example, in my own village, after 12, 13 days, Red Cross was going with 10 kg rice or something like this. And after 2 months, I visited this Caritas Nepal, one of the Japanese INGOs. It was trying to help there. And after 2 months, it was distributing taps over there. It is useless because they have already arranged something, but they are still doing. So, in a way, I could say that in a situation like ours, village, even NGO and INGO couldn't do better unless there is coordination. That is another observation we have. And as I mentioned earlier as well, you see, on the one hand, this natural disaster was there and people were suffering, but I could sense that even this natural disaster is very pro people. It has less thing to do with richer and even elite background people, because even if Kathmandu was the center of this earthquake, she has shown the map, Kathmandu was less affected, and even in the rural area, those who are rich were less affected because they were having very strong building, they were having bank balance, they were having other resources, so they could cope with in an easy manner. And that is how I think even if people were suffering from earthquake, Kathmandu at least was happy to bring this constitution issue. That is how, fortunately or unfortunately, we could have new constitution within 5 months of this earthquake. But still, I doubt, because on the one hand, this very authority is illegal now, which was to implement all policies and programs for earthquake victims, because you could imagine more than 600 houses are totally collapsed. I'll show you some pictures after this. but Kathmandu started this constitution debate, other political debate. In between, once constitution debate was there, there was Madhes unrest, and today, if you ask me, then people uh, are in the condition. Two major, one is post-earthquake problem. Another is now is this pre-festival, because next I think a couple of days after we start this Dasara festival, and for us it is 15-day festival. I think in India it is 10 day, but in Nepal it is 15 days festival, and you need lot many things to prepare for this festival. But once there was constitution issue, once there was Madhes unrest, and then it has invited sort of blockade, economic blockade in the Nepal-India border. There are lot many issues to deal with, but that blockade, which was brought by this political discussion, also affected lot about Nepali people today. So that is what is another observation, and there are a lot many other thing we should discuss. For example, I think we discussed about this. I'll show a couple of photographs. In that also we could learn some lesson from our rural life. For example, what first lesson we could see from this earthquake affected village is, given the circumstance in the village, because they are having very less resource to rebuild or even build their house, that is why primarily the affected area, if you follow household characteristic, by and large they use local materials like mud, stone and local woods. That is how they could build this house. And a couple of very interesting facts we could see out of this. For example, this house, even if its wall has been damaged, but you could see roof falling down towards the back, and if it is the case, people in the rural area could easily take this roof out, and there would be some woods, and they could easily co-op with this small houses like this. They just take this CGI sheet, zinc sheet, take this local wood out, and just go for the very congested kind of house. That is how I think wherever there is problem, there is a solution as well, I could say. What I want to state forward would be, given the situation, local people were, for them it was very easy to co-opt, to have very congested house. That is why I think one side of the story would be, people were not that much restless in the village, because at least once they could take this zinc sheet, jasta pata bolte hai hamare wahan, zinc sheet out, and have at least, for example, you could see over there also, they could just take out this wood as well, and they could reuse it. So easily they could co-opt with, and other story for them would be, there is no government at all. Never government could help them. That is why for them governance is sort of not their cup of tea. That is why also once there was this thing, maybe after a couple of days they could co-op with this small houses and etc. That is how I think this political discussion in Nepal seems to be possible. Otherwise, I don't think that it was possible for countries like this. And if you compare with these traditional houses with modern houses, for example, you could see modern houses could collapse like this. And it was very difficult for those villagers if they had modern houses. And in my village, they could compare with traditional houses and modern houses. In one event, it was very interesting. They were having both the houses, one modern house and one traditional house. Husband was, it was around 12, that is why that was time for their rest after this morning walk and to wait for evening walk. And husband was sleeping in a old traditional house, and wife was taking rest in the modern house. And what happened? Both houses damaged. Husband could just go out, because in between there was this wood also helped because it fall down, making sort of exit point. That is how he could come out. But wife, unfortunately, due to this, since she was in the perfect house, modern house, she is a pillared house. She was inside. She was crying, but no one could help her. Neither local instrument could help her. Neither her husband could help her. Eventually, she could die. That experiment was narrated from my own village. So, given the condition in the village, it was very interesting. If in a condition like our village, it is better to have traditional way, to follow traditional way than that of modern way, because if you have this pillar house, you have to bring those bulldozer, and it is not available in the rural area. How to bring this? So lot many new learning or lessons we could learn from the village. For example, see, as I mentioned, if you have traditional house, even if it is very old, you could see this is very old house, but it couldn't collapse like anything, and you could see part of wall fall down outside the house. That is how in this type of house you could at least find some useful thing inside the house as well. But that is not the case if you have very modern house. For example, you could see the modern house. It is pillared house. It is photograph of Kathmandu. It collapsed like anything. So these are the lessons we could learn. For example, this is another house collapse. I think in this very house the woman died. See, these are the photographs we could narrate. These old houses still, and I think for the to have this earthquake resistance house, you have to have light houses. That is another factor. If you have heavy structure, it collapses like anything, and you can't even go for rescue and rehabilitation easily. And these kind of houses seems to be very lighter. That is why even if a very strong earthquake comes, these kind of houses made less collapses and less damages. That is what this rural experience says. And then while saying so, I'm not saying that if you have perfectly designed, engineered, modern house, it is obviously better, but whether it is possible, that is also important. In a rural area, it is not possible because you have to carry all the materials from city, number one. You can't afford the cost because it is quite costly, because for villagers, it's beyond their capacity. Number three, even while talking about this rehabilitation or rebuilding process, Indra has narrated, government has offered, initially it had offered 7,000 rupees for their day-to-day, to continue their day-to-day activities. Later on, government provided 15,000 rupees to buy at least zinc sheet if it is damaged, so that they can have very, at least they can have at least structure to survive during the monsoon. And now government is saying that it provide 200,000 Nepali rupee. That means maybe 2,500 Singapore dollar for those who want to build their house, and they have to follow government design as well. That is the condition. And given the limitation, whether a villager can build a strong house with this 8.5 Richter capacity or thing, I don't think so. That is why I think in the rural area they have to go through new design of this traditional house. And we try to have stories of very senior people over there in the village also, and they could narrate. For example, they had other skills to have more stronger house than this kind of house. They had their own way to have stronger house following the tradition. That is what also they narrated. I think that is how they try to have new design based on their own indigenous knowledge, so that they can go for stronger house using this kind of material. These are the observations we could find out. So wait for a while. I think to conclude, I could say that yes, there are difficulties. For example, as I told, Nepal is facing a couple of crises. Since we are having pre-festival, post-earthquake situation, but we are having this no mechanism to go for reconstruction, number one. Number two, due to blockade also, we are not sure from where we could bring material, because not only the construction material we have to buy or import from India and elsewhere, but also we need a huge number of labor for that construction. You can't imagine 600,000 houses to be built, and it has to be built quite soon, because otherwise people are homeless. And on the other, we are sending at least 2,000 Nepali youth outside the country, and they are not ready to work inside country. I think there is psychological sense, because I think this is the case in all developing country, including India. Youth are not ready to engage with traditional occupation over there in the locality, but they are ready to go abroad or outside and continue similar kind of work. And that tendency is quite true, quite there in Nepal as well. That is why, on the one hand, we still send 2,000 people outside the country daily, and it is not changed even after the earthquake. And by and large, in a small country like Nepal, we could say that more than 3,100,000 Nepalese youth are outside country today. And we don't include those who are there in India working, because we have no mechanism to count because of the open border. So that is common going and coming phenomenon. So we don't count India. Except India, we could say that 3.1 million people, youth in Nepal, are working outside, and the ratio is being continued. For example, at least 2,000 youth a day. That is the government record to go for the foreign labor. That is why, number one, how to bring this construction material. At least we need, even if we follow traditional way, we need a CGI sheet or zinc sheet just for roof, whatever traditional structure we have. Again, we need nail, we can, other thing, for example, wire, some of those who want to build a modern house, for them glass, steel, everything has to be imported from elsewhere, and definitely by and large from India. That is why this is one of the major problem from where we get. And again, if you follow this Kathmandu tradition, I think 90% of this construction labor comes from Bihar and UP. So along with this blockade and Madhesh unrest, I think India and Nepal is having very difficult relationship as well, because in Nepal also there would be kind of abusive possibility of abusive language, and that would be the case in India as well. That is why I think along with this new political situation, sorry, it will be very difficult for us to cope up the post-earthquake situation. So, and as I mentioned, I could conclude saying that Nepal is society of resilience, and this to be the society of resilience, as I narrated, couple of unique factors available in the rural area could help them. For example, to follow this traditional way of housing, that helped them a lot, because they could rescue, they could at least survive with the reuse material for a while. That is why I think this political discourse and etc. was possible. So having said that, I think I should stop over here, and whatever queries you have, we can discuss further. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.